Police corruption is described in the textbook as being a multifaceted issue within the criminal justice community. There are several explanations for why such deviance occurs, but none that are uniform in identifying a solution. Given that police corruption can come in several forms, such as physical abuse of force, harassment, disrespect, intimidation, unlawful search or seizures, accepting of gratuities, and so forth, the addressing of these issues has become muddied in their application. In many cases, there are obvious laws against some of these acts which exist to prevent any citizen, law enforcement or otherwise, from acting illegally. However, for such issues such as accepting of gratuities, there are no such laws. Police department and generally any staff-operated business functions with policies independent of law. For a non-law enforcement example, while the consumption of marijuana has been legalized in certain U.S. states, private companies can still operate under a no-drug policy to include the use of marijuana. The same applies for police departments. While accepting gratuities is not an illegal act, the moral ambiguity of these transactions are made clearer by department policy. The same generally applies to the professional conduct of a police officer, and it is up to each officer individually to use their discretion while making decisions that do not blatantly appear to affect their career. Policy for their department may affect their discretion, but it is inevitably up to the officer in a single moment to make his or her own decisions. The text describes police corruption in the state of Florida with several specific examples, citing the Miami River Rats, a gang of officers committing armed robberies for cash and drugs, for one. This extreme example shows the power behind law enforcement and the capability of one man or woman to make the wrong decision. The examples of deviance in Chapter 7 provide three general types: individual, institutional, and systemic. Personally, the individual explanation can be used to describe any deviant behavior, within law enforcement or otherwise. However, in finding explanations for deviance outside of law enforcement, this explanation is rarely cited, so I would tend to do the same and disregard this as a meaningful interpretation of behavior. Regarding the institutional explanation, I would argue that this has likely been an issue in the past, but as our society grows to hold those with more executive power more and more responsible, I would step further away from this explanation, as institutions have adapted to accept their culpability in their staff's actions and have equally made strides and created policies against such liabilities. The explanation that I would most closely agree with is the societal interpretation of behavior. The police are expected to teeter on the fence of legality while dealing with certain issues such as criminal acts with so-called minimal victimization, yet they are also expected to uphold the law equally for all without bias. This poses many questions, such as whether a first-time offender should be given the same treatment as a repeat offender. The text describes multiple methods of dealing with police corruption, all of which I believe can contribute to a balanced and morality-driven police force. While integrity testing may be an intrusive micromanagement technique, I believe that officers in need of reminding that their power is not so absolute may benefit from this practice. The creation of internal anti-corruption units has the ability to monitor and isolate deviant behavior, eradicating it from the force. Another method of combating police corruption is the presence of a civilian complaint board, which can, in effect, function as a victim rights organization. Where citizens feel that they may have been wronged by the police, they need to speak their qualms loud and direct enough to be heard, and given the ability to do so. I believe that it is also important to maintain an air of support and confidence in the police force. While there are obvious and unfortunate circumstances that are shared in the media with great fervor, it is with dignity and respect that the relationship between the criminal justice industry and civilians can be repaired. To destroy the us versus them mentality within the criminal justice industry would be to unite law enforcement and civilians together.